Hello, and welcome along to today's lunchtime stream. Afternoon, Arthur, how's it going? So today's stream, I'm going to be talking about, or we're going to be working on rather, GitReleaseManager. So there's sort of been a renewed enthusiasm for this project, mainly from me, I'll be honest. It's one of those projects that's kind of it works and it does what it does, but I've been reinvigorated to work on it, mainly because of the pull requests that have come in from Arthur and from Kim, but generally because people seem to like to use it. I mean, it's got quite high downloads numbers and things like that, so from that point of view, there's a few things that I want to tackle with it. So from a higher level Git tools organization. Hello, Kim. How's it going today? There's a little bit of news regarding the Git tools organization. So the first one was that over the weekend, last weekend, I created a new Git tools Twitter account for this one. So if you are interested in any sort of updates to Git version or GitReleaseManager, then there's an official Twitter account now for Git tools. Internally, as part of the project team, so myself, Arthur, a few other folks, we've also got a new Slack channel that we've created for ourselves. It brings together various things in terms of notifications for GitHub issues, Stack Overflow questions, that sort of stuff. So basically try to centralize some of the overall, I guess, the project management of the Git tools organization. So that is set up and being used. And the other piece of news is that following some amazing PRs going into GitReleaseManager, the decision was taken, I think, yesterday, to invite Kim, also known as Admiring Worm, into the Git tools organization as a contributor to the GitReleaseManager project. So I just want to say thank you to Kim for all of his hard work that he's been doing on that one. It really is very much appreciated. So also, Arthur has been busy doing GitHub actions and various things for Git version. And a conversation that we've had just this morning is that this this repository here that is called Actions, that used to be called Use Git version. So that was an action specifically for Git version. So Arthur's going to be working on, you'll see it noted here, that it's going to execute both Git version and GitReleaseManager. So in the same way that you can run Git version as a GitHub action, ultimately you'll be able to do the same thing with GitReleaseManager as well. So Arthur has agreed to take on that work, which is very much appreciated. And what I'm working on in terms of this organization in the next little while is I'm working on the documentation side of stuff for Git version. So Git version today uses Read the Docs to host its documentation. So we've decided within the team to move away from using Read the Docs and instead to use the same documentation that's being used for GitReleaseManager. So if we jump over here, so GitReleaseManager uses YAM to generate its documentation. There's a couple of reasons for doing that, but one of the main ones is that originally the appeal of Read the Docs was it has this concept of being able to support different versions of documentation. That doesn't really work in practice because it means you have to have the documentation all in sync, ready to go, ready to ship at the point in time that you generate the release. That doesn't really work in practice. So I've taken on the work of migrating the docs from Read the Docs into YAM. So there's an open pull request over here which is to do just that, and you can kind of follow along on the progress there. So over here, you can see it started flushing it out. I mean, I've got the basic documentation working, but one of the things that YAM also brings along for the ride is this concept of the API. So it will actually scan, or it'll go through all of the CS files that you tell it to, and it actually provides information about the source code, including any XML documentation that it creates or it has available. So that's one of the things that's currently missing on the documentation that I've got just today. But there will be another tab up here that is API that will expose and drill into the different methods, types, all that sort of stuff that exists within the Git version project. So that's what I'm going to be working on from my Git version point of view. And over the last couple of days, Kim's been going nuts. I'll be honest. He's been going nuts doing pull requests into GitReleaseManager. One of which is just amazing. That it's been on my to-do list for literally years, but Kim has picked it up. So it was this. It's such a silly thing, really, but it's also something I've always kind of wanted. And it's the concept of having like a logo when the executable runs to display what the tool is. So Kim went through a few iterations in terms of suggestions for the ASCII art, and then we settled on a more basic layout. And then it was either, do we spell out the whole word that is GitReleaseManager, or do we just do GRM? So Kim, doing what he does, he's actually made it such that it will inspect the console width to decide what space is available in order to make an informed decision about whether it says GitReleaseManager and spells it all out, or whether it just shows GRM. And obviously there's a flag that you can enable to not show the logo. But just a little bit of advertisement and a little bit of people knowing what's executing in their logs. So I think it's a great idea. So thank you, Kim, for doing that. There's a message there. And another great set of news is that AppVeyor will include Git version. I did see that as well. So that was over. So where did that was just appveyor.ci/ci. AppVeyor CI, I think. So yeah, one of the issues that was created, and I noticed today, was Git version is going to be included on the 2019 base image that is used on AppVeyor. So people will be able to use it as part of their build process on AppVeyor without having to do anything else. So I noted here to Fyodor that Arthur told me that there's a kind of a known issue with the latest version of Git version when it's running on AppVeyor. So I just mentioned to Fyodor here that potentially he might want to either revert to an earlier version or wait for the next release before adding it in. So it is in their next release of the VS 2000 image, so there's maybe a little bit of time for us to get a new release of Git version out before that will happen. So that's all good news, absolutely. So where I was going to go next with GitReleaseManager, there's a few things that I want to do with it. And they kind of stack up on top of each other. So last night I was playing with this concept, which was I wanted to add a GitHub action to build GitReleaseManager, just because. But that's not going to work, unfortunately. So I started it, and it worked in terms of it ran the build, but it didn't. The build didn't succeed, and the build didn't succeed because currently cake.recipe, which is used by GitReleaseManager, one of the add-ins that it uses doesn't support .NET Core because of a dependency on Razor Engine. So I had to back out that plan a little bit. So I haven't been able to get my GitHub Actions build running for GitReleaseManager, but it's entirely simple. Once it's to add it in, it's entirely simple. So can I still? I'll see it in a commit. If I go back to 2 commits ago before I deleted it, it's really, really simple. So Enrico Campidoglio, I hate. I really am brutalizing his name. I know I am. Enrico anyway, has created a GitHub action for executing Cake. So the YAML file that you need in order to run a Cake script is really, really simple. So you just do a simple checkout, and then you use Enrico's Cake action, GitHub action, specifying the name of the file you want it to run and the target that you want it to run, and it just runs it. You don't have to worry about bootstrapping, all that sort of stuff. It handles all of that for you. So it's just unfortunate that at the minute Cake.recipe doesn't build on .NET Core. So that's one of my other projects that I need to finish and circle around to get that working. But I'm kind of in GitReleaseManager mode now, so I'm going to stick with this for a little bit and then circle back around to Cake.recipe. I know Kim had been looking at what was needed to get Cake.issues working under .NET Core, but I think you came upon a roadblocker there that meant you couldn't quite finish that off. So not able to do that one, unfortunately. There's a couple of other top-level issues that are more administration stuff, so setting of environment variables, NuGet API keys, that sort of stuff. They won't need to be done until the next release actually is ready, so I haven't done those ones yet. But the one I do want to start looking at are kind of these two. So the intention of GitReleaseManager was always the case that it was meant to be able to support multiple source control systems. The project was originally called GitHub Release Manager, and then I renamed it to Git Release Manager with the intention of being able to run it on Bitbucket, being able to run it on GitLab, whatever source control system you happen to use. For reasons that never happened, mainly because I kind of focused on GitHub, and that's where I do all of my development work. On everything that uses Git, absolutely, Kim. But for other reasons, I've now got a impetus to make it work on GitLab. So there's some refactoring work needed to make the code base less resistant to other source control systems. Because at the minute, there's a very close coupling between GitHub. More specifically, coupling between OctoKit, which is the .NET API, into GitHub to make it work with other providers. So before we can implement management of releases through GitLab, we will have to refactor the project to remove some of that coupling. So that's kind of what I wanted to start with today. Now, I actually did some of this work earlier this year in March. When I was at the MVP Summit in Redmond, I sat down and I started doing this work because I was getting some help from some of the other MVPs that were there. And I have a working stage changes that kind of start going through that, but basically it's been 9 months and I don't remember what we did or why. So I'm pretty much going to start again, and I'm going to start it on the stream and go and kind of walk through that process and see where we get to. So that's the plan for today. Hello, Maurice. How's it going? Good to see you, or hear from you anyway. I was just saying that we're going to start working on refactoring GitReleaseManager so that it is more open to being run on different source control systems. So that's kind of where I want to start today. So this is issue 145. So let's go ahead and create a new branch. So git, almost did it, git switch -c, we'll do feature gh 145 from the develop branch. Beautiful. I have, so, Maurice, yes, that is on my list of things to do as well. Now, the reason I haven't done that is at the time that I was looking, so we did a stream on that, so we had Patrick on the stream. Patrick was telling us how we could add Spectre CLI into the mix. At the time, Spectre CLI didn't support the concept of accepting array inputs. Now that is something that GitReleaseManager requires for some of the commands that it has. And I've actually literally, like 20 minutes ago, sent a message to Patrick via Slack asking the question of whether Spectre CLI now supports accepting arrays as values. And if the answer to that is yes, then there's literally nothing to stop us doing that work. The reason that so as I said, the changes needed to GitReleaseManager kind of stack up on top of each other. I don't want to do too much more just now until we do the refactoring to support multiple version control systems, because as we just add more things into it, it means more things that we need to refactor. So if we do that refactoring first, then we can start looking at adding the discard command that I want to add. And then before adding the discard command, it would make sense to switch out Spectre CLI so that the new commands go into Spectre CLI, and then the new commands automatically flow through into the refactored code base that is open to other source control providers. So command param value. See, the issue that I would have with that, though, sorry, Maurice. The issue that I would have with that is, do I have it installed? No, I don't. Choco install git release manager. Can't spell. Manager.portable. The issue that I have with that is that I want to attempt to make... I want the switch over to Spectre CLI to be as non-backward breaking as possible. So if I do here a grm create as an example, then I have an assets. So I can do create -a with ctemp test.text. Can't write that. And then it's either, I think it's a semicolon delimiter. I can then do ctemp. Why is that not working? Temp test.1.text. So I would want to try and keep the API surface that is the commands as closely aligned as possible. So I need to have a chat with Patrick basically to see what that's doing, because that syntax that you've shown there, Maurice, although that might work, that would be a breaking change. Now, I'm not against doing a breaking change, but I want to make sure that there's not another way of handling that. So that's where we are with that. So, like I say, where we're going, that's not the window I wanted to write CLS into. Well, let's put it into this one rather than the chat window. And yes, Arthur, with regard to Spectre CLI, I think it would make sense for the two projects to be in alignment in terms of the command argument parser that they're using. So if you're on board with switching to Spectre CLI, that would be good for from a consistency point of view. I think that would make a lot of sense. Anyway, so let's get the project open in Visual Studio. So GitReleaseManager. So I have got the changes that I made back in March on my screen over here, right? So I'm going to replay some of these changes to allow me to kind of remember what we did and why. Okay, now and that, so Maurice, so that's the only format that it lives in, or can I provide a comma limited or semicolon delimited parameter, so I don't have to do the --param --param. Okay, I'll maybe have to speak to him about that then. Okay, so as I was saying, part of the work that needs to happen, if we go and have a look at the GitHub client. So where's the GitHub client? So currently there is an GitHub client class in the code base that's here, right? So this GitHub client is directly coupled to OctoKit. And that kind of makes sense because OctoKit is the GitHub provider. So it's it is the thing that allows access to GitHub, right? So having the GitHub client being coupled to OctoKit makes perfect sense. However, we want to change that up a little bit, and we want to be able to say that we want to create an implementation of this, which is get number of commits, get issues, all that sort of stuff. We want to change that to a less specific implementation so that we can have a GitHub version of this, have a GitLab version of this, have a Bitbucket version of this, and so on. So the work that we did back in March was to refactor this to remove some of that coupling, right? See, I'm just reading some of the comments in the chat here. I'm not sure if I like it or not. I don't know. I mean, the one of the reasons that I don't like it is that if we make that switch, one, it's a breaking change, and two, I'm going to have to go back to the cake aliases for GitReleaseManager so that it supports that different syntax. So it's just more work. If I can get Spectre CLI to support the existing format, then there's less work to do. Now, obviously, that's more work for Patrick to do, but it's also in line with how existing command line parsers work, because this one that we're using today supports that concept of having, like I say, either comma delimited or semicolon delimited input parameters. So, not sure. I'll come back to him. I'll speak to Patrick about it and see what he says. So I'm casting my mind back now. So what we had was, so right now, this milestone object and this release object and this issue object are the OctoKit implementations of those. Now, when we switch over to use something like GitLab, it's going to have its own representation of what those things are. Now, in order for this project to be distinct from those, then we really want to not couple directly to the use of that milestone. So what we started doing over in this branch that we have over here is we started adding some model classes. And those model classes were intended to be the GitReleaseManager's representation of those things. So let's replay some of that. So I'm going to add a new folder here called model. And in here, I'm going to create classes for issue. Now, do I want to call that issue, or do I want to call that? Yeah, I think we do. I think I want to call that issue. So we want issue. We want another one that is release. So basically all of the top level objects that are used within GitReleaseManager, we need an implementation of those. The other one's a label. So add a class here that is, nope, that's not what I was trying to write. Let's do label and say yes. Okay. So label is a simple one. So let's do, I'm struggling to write today. And then in here, we're going to write a prop that is a string that is the name. Okay. So that's the only thing that we use within the label class. Milestone, public, sealed. Whoa. That didn't work very well, did it? Public. Too many D's in there. So in here, what we need for milestone is a string that is the title. We have a string that is the description. We have a string that is the number. We have a string that is the HTML URL. So these are all the properties that are currently made use of within GitReleaseManager. So obviously, from a GitHub perspective, these things exist, right? Now, when it comes to a different provider, i.e. GitLab, some of these things might not exist. So we're going to need to think about how we can convert those, or whether we need to do something else or not use them. So the final one there is a version property, right? And so that's label, milestone. There's one for issue as well. So let's make this again a public sealed class. And then on the issue, there is a title. So let's make this a string that is the title. And then we have a string that is the number. We have a string that is the HTML URL. And then we have a prop that is a read-only list of labels. So an issue has a set of labels. Okay. And that label is going to be our model label, which it is. Okay. So we've got an issue, we've got a label, and then the release was the last one. Okay. No. Did I remove the unnecessary? I didn't. Let's remove the unnecessary usings. Broke something there. Try that again. Move that. And then back to the release. So the release here has, let's make it a public sealed again. And then the release has a body, which is a string. And then it has a tag name. Let's get rid of the extra P's that are put in there. String has a tag name. And then it has a prop that is a date time offset, and that is created at. Okay. Okay. So I think those are all the top level. Those are the top level objects that we want. Okay. So now now, if we go and have a look at this iGitHub client. So the first thing I want to do is I want to change this interface. So I don't want to call it the iGitHub client. I want to instead call it something that will be ambiguous to any source control provider that we choose to try and support. So the one that I settled on when I was going through this last time was the iVCS client. So the thought process there is version control system client. It was kind of the best thing I could come up with. I'm open to different suggestions there, but in the absence of anything else, that is what I'm going to go with. And I'm going to rename my iGitHub client here to be iVCS client as well. VCS client. Okay. So in order for that to work, I'm going to remove the coupling between this iVCS client and OctoKit. So it now goes away, right? Now for that to work, we then need to have the slot-in replacements that we've just created for our own model classes. So in theory, I've now broken a lot of stuff, Maurice. I fully expected that to break. But this should allow us to put in a reference to the classes that we just created. So we've got our milestone being replaced with our own model implementation for milestone, for issue, for release, and so on. So it's still working there. I suspect if I do a larger build, then stuff's going to break. I fully expect stuff still to be broken. So I agree, Kim. So that was my concern. So what do you call collectively GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket? I realize that VCS is kind of a coupling to the underlying source control system, but what do you put in here then? Instead of VCS, what do you put? Because I couldn't think of anything. So I am open to suggestions there. Okay. So what else did we do previously as we were working through this? So we removed that and we put all of those things in, which we did. Good. Okay. So then, repo client, repository client, probably not entirely correct either though. Because then, again, that's coupling to a repository. GitHub and GitLab isn't just a repository. It is a collection of issues, wikis. I know we call it a repository, but the thing around it is much bigger than that. So, remote client. Let's do this. Let's have a to-do here. To-do confirm best name for this thing. Let's do that. So at least we've got a note to come back to it. Okay? And at the minute, we'll make this at least consistent. Otherwise, things will complain. Okay. So, all of those things in play meant then that we have other things that we need to change as well. So there's 20 open errors. So there's at least, this is where we need to start. Okay. So this thing here that's called the default GitHub client. Oh, I remember why. Ouch. Maurice, sorry about that. So the reason there's a distinction here between default GitHub client and GitHub client. So OctoKit provides the GitHub client object And then there's a higher level thing here that is the kind of the local implementation of it that has the methods that we need in it. So first thing we need to do, first of all, is we would need to change this to be VCS client so that it matches. Then some of these things are going to break. And some of these things are going to break for good reason, because this milestone is a OctoKit milestone, and we want it to return the things that we're interested in. So, first of all, we want to... how best to do this? I think we should do this as GitReleaseManager.core.model.milestone. Okay, so we can reduce that to just model. Okay, good. Milestone equals we would need to do one for each one, but there's no reason to not do that. So what Kim's suggesting there is if we do using milestone is equal to model.milestone, using release is equal to model.release, using issue is equal to model.issue, and then using label is equal to model.label, not dual, model.label. There's obviously not labels being used in here because it's not there. So I can now go down here and take this out. Okay, so that now essentially fixes this default implementation, but it will be broken when it comes to these things. Okay, so again, this is where it starts getting, there's this chain going down the way, right? So this .github client target milestone, we need to map from our milestone to the GitHub's milestone, right? Come to that in a second. Because that is one that is in the extensions. Oh, okay. So we're still, this is still under our control because GitHub OctoKit extensions. OctoKit extensions. So I was sort of going down the route of potentially using Automapper to do that work, but I haven't settled on that. Let's put it that way. Now, I just realised that I'm going to change this to have that on it because I've kind of recently moved back to using underscores for private member variables. So, don't hate me. And then I'm going to remove the usage of this dot. Don't hate me. So, I'm going to remove these. I could just do a search and replace, but I want to make sure that I'm not throwing away something that I didn't intend to. Whoa, like that. So, let's take these out. And then there's a few things. Let's tidy these up. Any more on there? Can't be that many more. We're almost at the bottom of the file. Cut them off? Nope. There's one hiding. Is that them all? Yeah, there we go. Okay. So then in here we have so the problem then is in optokit extent. Now at some point we are going to have to change a GitHub issue into the issue that we've got here. There's going to have to be some sort of mapping between the one and the other, right? Now, how that happens and when that happens, that's a decision point. Now, that's the point that I never really got to when I was doing this, refactoring the first time round. You could add a naming convention for that in the editor config file. Then you can configure warnings for naming that doesn't match. That sounds like a good idea to me. Oh, see, I see some other things that I don't like just now, but these are more of a style issue than anything. You know what? While I'm in that mood, I'm going to search the whole. While I try and process some other things in the background, I'm going to remove all the this dots because, well, I can, and then that's that, and that's fine. Okay, good. There's a few in there. These are all the classes that Kim has just recently added, so I feel a little bit bad removing them. But why is that not telling me? Oh, I see. Let's do it. I'm in the mood to refactor stuff, so let's do this. Let's remove some of the dots. Dun, dun, dun. That one. And then we can refactor that one. This is really just delaying what I should be working on, which is try to figure out how to map one issue to the other. So this is not what's important, but it'll make me stop and think about doing that other stuff. Let's get it finished now that I've started, and then we should have some time to go back and think about it. Beautiful. So, great point, so we can see it a little bit better, but we don't need that. Don't need that. Don't need that. How many more are there? Oh, there's quite a few. Maybe we shouldn't have started this. But we're here now. We're going to do it. We are doing this thing. So I'll ask, while I'm doing this sort of stuff, what are our thoughts on using something like AutoMapper to do a mapping between our internal issue, as an example, and a GitLab, why am I saying that? A GitHub issue and or a GitLab issue. Do we think that makes sense? Let's come back to understand why that's intriguing. I mean, I've used AutoMapper quite a bit in the past. Have you not played with Automapper? Have you not played with Automapper before? Automapper is very good at what it does. It's one of those tools that can be abused, but if you're doing simple sort of side-by-side translations from one object to another, it's really quite good. So it's by a guy called Jimmy Bogard, same guy that did Mediator and a few other tools that are out there. It's one of his open source projects. And you can literally create a mapping profile between one object and the other. So if the properties are slightly different, then you can map name on one object to title on another. So if they're the same object but they've got a slightly different meaning, then you can use Automapper to map those two things together. If the objects are the same on both sides, then the mapper is really simple. So it's really just mapping this object to this object. Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh, I heard Octomapper. Oh, no, sorry. No. I was talking about Automapper. So, yeah, Jimmy Bogard's tool. So that's kind of where I was thinking about going with this. It's maybe a little bit of overkill for the number of properties that we're talking about, but it's one of those things that if those objects start to get bigger, then Automapper's just there. It'll just keep on handling it, and you just update the profile as required. So that sounds like it's a +1 from Kim for using Automapper. Cool. Okay, so we'll maybe just do that then, because we'll maybe just let it do its thing. And we will just map the objects. And we've got a +1 from Arthur as well. So it's Automapper all round then. See a few more of this is. This is so not hard to do, but it feels good. See some more instances where things are broken. So we'll have to fix these things. Which class is this? So this is the main class. This is where the majority of the work happens. So this is one that we will need to do some heavy refactoring on. 10 to 18. Getting there. Mm-hmm. Lots of nice underscores. Just have to mention, if you want to enforce the code style per repo, you can generate the editor config. Oh, can you? Okay, we're going to have to go and have a look at that. This is a squirrel moment, but that sounds like a nice squirrel moment. So, let me just finish doing this. Did that. Definitely feel free to interrupt me with things like that, because I don't know about it, so happy to hear about it. Okay. 2. There's 1. This one hiding over here. Okay. And then there's 9 left. Or so nearly there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so we're going tools, options, text editor, C#. Oh, what's that? And why is there two of them? What's a C# LSP? Interesting. C#. There is an option to generate .editor config from your current settings. C#. Code style. This one. Generate editor config file from settings. Oh. So, am I going to click go? This .preference. Qualify field access with this. Preference. Do not prefer this. Refactoring. Ooh. So this is going to have lots of things for me to figure out. But then I can tinker with them based on... Do not prefer this. Oh. So I'm going to hit go. And then what? That's going to come up with errors, warnings, and things. What did that create for me then? Or where did it put that editor config file? Where did it put it? Docs, source. I thought I pressed it. I did. What button did I push? I thought I pressed that button. Oh no, I pressed it this time. I thought I did. Sorry. So source at that level. Okay, go gadget. Right. Just doing something. User preferences overridden by editor.config file. Okay. So now I'll get a bunch of warnings, suggestions, and errors. Let's test this out. Oh no. No, hold on. Warning, server not responding. Oh, that's not good. I think my connection's gone. I think my internet's gone away. Oh no, I'm back again. That was weird. Since you haven't changed the settings from your default, you won't notice any difference, but it will be enforced for other people. I see. Okay. But I could also up the severity of that thing that I just added into here. Oh no, hold on. Oh no, that's a different editor config now. So I put one in here. Okay. You added it to source. I might put that up on a higher level. .NET style qualifications for event. False, silent. Okay. Okay, I'm going to come back and look at this. I'm going to come back and look at that because I'll probably need to update my own file to include my new defaults. But that's fine. That's fine. Okay. Okay. Right. So where do we get to? So that there wants to be a VCS client. A minute. This here wants to be a VCS client, I think. And this here wants to be a VCS client. Why is that? Oh, because we'll need to do the whole thing with the thing again. So we would need to do using issue equal to model.issue using release equal to model.release. Looks like I'm going to have to fully qualify that a little bit more. So this is going to be core.model. Core.model. And then using milestone is core.model.milestone. Okay. So for this one, I probably could do that because OctoKit wasn't actually being used in that one. And then this one I can add in the explicit using, which is for that one. Okay. Beautiful. Okay, so it's coming up on time though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to submit this as a work in progress PR up to GitHub, and then continue iterating on this. So we should get to a point where nothing should change from a front end point of view. It should all just work, and it should all continue to work in the same way that it did before, but we're now in a position where right back at the start, so when we come in here as an example, then look at that, love it. Here, this will going forward, this will be the default, but there will be an additional argument on all of the commands that is provider, maybe for want of a better term. So the provider by default will be GitHub. So folks using GitReleaseManager today won't need to change anything. It'll still continue to function for them. But when they say create release, they could say provider GitLab. So at that point, we would new up a new instance of the GitLab client rather than the GitHub client. And that would then be passed through into all of the methods where it's actually used, and off it goes. Okay, so that's kind of the thought process. That's where we're trying to get to. So each of these top level things here, this can't be a specific implementation. This needs to be a VCS client as well, I suspect. So is that what we did before? So what class is that? That's in program.cs. I don't know if we changed program.cs previously. We didn't. But I suspect, so we can't pass in that specifically. We need to pass in, you see that's fundamentally broken. So this one currently, that is the OctoKit GitHub client. Yeah, that's not going to fly, is it? That needs to be something else that we pass in there. Need to think about that some more. But anyway, so that's where we're at. So I'm going to, what am I going to do? I'm going to say here, get extension. Let's have a commit here. That is, these are all these will probably get rebased out, but let's do a GH4 initial stab at refactoring code base to allow providers. I'm kind of settling on provider. To allow providers other than GitHub to be used to manage releases. Okay, fine. Commit that. I think you can as well. You definitely can. There is a Team Explorer window that allows you to hook it up. I haven't really used it, to be honest. I tend to stay in these kind of two areas, but I'm going to push this up to my fork, and then from there that will allow me to create a pull request, which will make it as a draft. If I go up to GitReleaseManager, it should tell me. Why is that not telling me? Oh. No, I thought my origin. Yeah, why is it not lighting up to say that there's a new... Normally it lights up in yellow saying, oh, it's here, it's moved. Oh, I know what that is. That is, what's it called? Refined GitHub, moving the cheese a little bit there. But that's okay, I can get used to that too. So, create pull request. Yeah, so you see, refined GitHub. Normally it's yellow. I think that was the thing that was, oh, I should have made that, how do I, oh. I missed that. How do I change it now that I've created it? Oh. Can I not change it now that I've... Dang it. Oh well. Sorry. Let's... This is not ready for merging. That's not ready now. This isn't ready for merging yet. Forgot to create it as a draft. PR. Oh, jeez. Okay, fine. Good stuff. Okay, so this is obviously fundamentally broken. Doesn't work, but it's a starting point. So we can go through. I can continue working through those and try and get to a point where everything's all lined up. So that's the plan for going forward. I think that's all I have for just now, though. So Monday night we can continue this if you're interested, because I would like to get to a point where this is the baseline is there for starting to add GitLab as a first port of call for creating releases on GitLab, and then building out if there's any other interest for different ones going forward. Okay, so that's all I have. Host client? Host? Is it, I keep saying the word provider. Does that make sense? Provider client? As in hosting provider? Provider client? Naming's hard, right? Host client? The host being GitHub, GitLab. I don't mind host client. I could be convinced by that. Let me mull that one over, Kim. I think that could work. Just need to say them when I think of them. Yeah, I don't mind host client. Host client. Provider client. VCS client. I'll mull them over. Okay, that's it. That's all I have just now. So I will hopefully see you all on Monday. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.